The 1971 United States of America Kennedy half dollar is an important coin in modern American numismatics because it marks the end of silver circulating half dollars and the beginning of the copper-nickel clad era for this denomination, making it the first year that Kennedy halves were produced without any silver for regular circulation. On the obverse appears the familiar portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts, showing the left-facing bust with the word Liberty curving around the rim, Kennedy's hair separating the letters cleanly, while the motto, "In God We Trust," sits beneath the bust in two parts, split by the truncation of the neck. The date 1971 rests at the bottom, and on Philadelphia pieces there is no mint mark, whereas Denver pieces show a D mint mark located above the date, just left of the bust. San Francisco produced proof coins with an S mint mark featuring deeper, mirrored fields. The reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo, displaying the modified presidential seal with a heraldic eagle clutching an olive branch in its right talon, and arrows in its left, with wings spread widely and a shield on the chest, all encircled by 50 stars representing the states. Above the eagle is the Latin motto E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. And around the rim appear United States of America and half dollar. Because this was the first clad half dollar, the composition changed to 75% copper and 25% nickel on the outer layers bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin a distinct, lighter ring and a copper-colored edge, unlike earlier silver pieces. The standard weight is 11.34 grams, diameter 30.6 millimeters, and thickness 2.15 millimeters, with a reeded edge. In 1971, production was extremely high, over 155 million minted in Philadelphia and more than 300 million in Denver, because the U.S. Mint expected strong circulation demand, though the half dollar was already becoming uncommon in daily commerce. Most 1971 halves today remain common and have little premium unless in high mint state grades or proof condition. Mint state examples must be nearly flawless, often MS 65 or above, to attract collectors, as contact marks are common from heavy bag storage. Several well-known errors and varieties exist, such as the 1971 D double die obverse, showing doubling on Liberty, or In God We Trust, and the 1971 D wrong planchet error, where few were accidentally struck on leftover 40% silver planchets from 1970, making them extremely rare and desirable. There are also off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and proof-like circulation coins that collectors seek. In general circulation, however, a typical 1971 half dollar is worth face value, though uncirculated or proof versions range from a few dollars to significantly more for high-grade certified examples or major errors. Historically, the coin continues the legacy begun in 1964 to honor Kennedy shortly after his assassination. Despite declining circulation use, it remains a nostalgic and politically significant coin, emphasizing national unity through its inscriptions, In God We Trust and E pluribus unum. Today, the 1971 Kennedy half dollar serves not only as a piece of currency, but as a transitional artifact showing how U.S. coinage shifted from silver to modern clad metal, marking a major moment in American minting history and standing as a popular entry point for new collectors because of its availability, recognizable design, and connection to an important historical era. Next top. The 1972 United States Kennedy half dollar is a widely collected American coin that carries both historical and numismatic significance, representing a period in U.S. coinage when the nation was transitioning away from silver as a circulating metal. The obverse of the coin features the left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Chief Engraver Gilroy Roberts, who modeled Kennedy's profile shortly after the president's assassination in 1963. This design was meant to symbolize national unity and mourning, leading to the half dollar's rapid approval and release just months after his death. Surrounding Kennedy's portrait are the bold capital letters of Liberty, which arc around the upper rim of the coin with the phrase, In God We Trust, positioned in two parts beneath the portrait, In God to the lower left and We Trust to the lower right, while the date 1972 appears centered at the bottom. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, carries a highly detailed adaptation of the presidential seal, depicting a heraldic eagle with a shield on its chest, an olive branch in its right talon symbolizing peace, and a bundle of arrows in its left talon representing readiness for defense. The eagle's beak holds a flowing ribbon bearing the motto, E pluribus unum, out of many one, and above the eagle are radiating lines encircled by 50 stars representing the states. This emblem, combined with the inscription, United States of America, along the top and $50 along the bottom, gives the coin a stately, patriotic appearance. By 1972, the Kennedy half-dollar had already undergone a major compositional shift. Originally introduced in 1964 as a 90% silver circulation coin, it transitioned to a 40% silver-clad composition from 1965 to 1970, but after 1970 the circulating half-dollar became copper-nickel-clad, made of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded over a pure copper core. Therefore, the 1972 issue contains no silver in normal circulation strikes. These 1972 half-dollars were minted at 3 facilities: Philadelphia, No Mint Mark; Denver, D Mint Mark; and San Francisco, S Mint Mark. Mintage totals were very high. Philadelphia and Denver produced hundreds of millions of circulation strikes, making most examples common today, while the San Francisco Mint produced highly reflective proof coins, identifiable by their sharp detail and mirror-like fields. Although 1972 half-dollars are generally common, certain collectible varieties exist, including minor die errors, double dies, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, and examples with unusually strong details due to fresh dies. Among these, high-grade mint state or proof coins certified by grading companies, such as PCGS or NGC, can command notable premiums. As a circulating issue, the 1972 half-dollar saw limited real-world use because the half-dollar denomination had already begun to fall out of regular commerce owing to the rise of quarters and the public's unfamiliarity with the larger coin, but it remains popular with collectors for album sets and for its enduring connection to President Kennedy. Though many people describe older coins as rare, most 1972 Kennedy half-dollars in worn or circulated condition are typically worth only face value, while exceptionally preserved pieces with brilliant surfaces, strong strikes, and no contact marks can be worth more to collectors. The coin continues to attract interest because of its design, historical background, and the symbolism embedded in its inscriptions. Liberty, standing for national ideals; In God We Trust, representing the nation's long-standing motto adopted in the 1950s, and E pluribus unum, a motto dating back to the nation's founding that reflects unity among the states. Altogether, the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar remains an enduring example of modern American coinage, combining artistry, national symbolism, and mid-20th century history in a single, widely available collectible piece. Next top. The 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar, minted at the Denver Mint and bearing the D. Mint mark on the reverse below the eagle's claw, is part of the long-running series commemorating President John F. Kennedy after his assassination in 1963. It represents a transitional era in American coinage when half-dollars were still widely produced for commerce, but were rapidly disappearing from everyday circulation. The obverse of the coin features the familiar left-facing portrait of President Kennedy created by Chief Engraver Gilroy Roberts, with the inscriptions Liberty around the top rim, In God We Trust in 2 sections flanking the bust, and the date 1973 centered at the bottom. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, displays the heraldic eagle adapted from the presidential seal, holding an olive branch and arrows to symbolize peace and strength, surrounded by E pluribus unum, a ring of stars, and the legend United States of America, half-dollar. By 1973, the coin's composition had already shifted from the earlier 90% silver, 1964, and later 40% silver, 1965 to 1970, issues to the modern copper-nickel-clad composition, an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This change, driven by rising silver prices and hoarding in the late 1960s, turned the Kennedy half-dollar into an everyday circulation coin intended to function like quarters and dimes. though in practice it saw diminishing use because banks, casinos, and vending industries increasingly relied on alternative payment systems. The 1973 D issue is particularly interesting among collectors because 1973 half dollars were not released for general circulation. The mint produced them only for mint sets sold to collectors, meaning that although the mintage was fairly high, over 83 million coins, most examples survived in better-than-average condition, often with decent luster, strong strikes, and minimal circulation wear. As a result, typical uncirculated 1973 D half dollars are common, though gem-quality specimens graded MS 66 or higher can command much greater interest because strike quality at Denver in the early 1970s could vary significantly, and perfectly preserved surfaces are not guaranteed despite the high mintage. Specialists often examine details such as the sharpness of Kennedy's hair, the clarity of the lettering in "In God We Trust," and the definition of the eagle's feathers on the reverse to assess strike quality. Coins with strong cartwheel luster and minimal contact marks typically achieve the highest grading tiers. While there are no major recognized die varieties or errors specific to the 1973 D that dramatically increase value, collectors do occasionally encounter minor die cracks, machine doubling, or planchet flaws, which may add small premiums for enthusiasts of error coins. In terms of value, most 1973 D half dollars fall within a modest range unless professionally certified at very high grades. Circulated pieces are generally worth face value, while typical uncirculated examples may carry a small premium. Still, the coin has lasting historical importance as part of the Kennedy half-dollar series, a series that continues to be minted but rarely seen in daily commerce, and it reflects the American mint's adaptation to the evolving economics of metal content, inflation, and coin usage in the 1970s. For many collectors, the 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar serves as a snapshot of U.S. numismatic history, a durable copper-nickel coin that preserves the legacy of a president, the artistic contributions of Roberts and Gasparro, and the shifting role of coinage in an increasingly electronic and paper-based financial system. Even today, it remains a popular entry point for new collectors because it is accessible, historically rich, visually impressive with its large 30.6mm diameter, and easy to find in high quality due to its original distribution through mint sets rather than general circulation. Next top. The 1974 D. Kennedy half-dollar, minted at the Denver Mint and marked with the small d mint mark to the right of the truncation of Kennedy's neck on the obverse, is an important mid-series issue that represents the U.S. Mint's fully established transition away from silver coinage into the modern copper-nickel era, reflecting both economic changes and the shifting role of the half-dollar in American commerce. Like all Kennedy has beginning in 1971, the 1974 D is composed of a copper-nickel-clad alloy, outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its characteristic silvery color without containing true precious metal. The obverse features the left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Chief Engraver Gilroy Roberts, with the bold inscription Liberty running around the upper rim, the motto "In God We Trust" divided on two lines beneath Kennedy's chin, and the date 1974 placed centrally at the bottom. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparro, carries the powerful heraldic eagle adapted from the presidential seal, grasping an olive branch symbolizing peace, and a bundle of arrows representing the nation's military strength. Above the eagle appears the motto E Pluribus Unum, while a ring of 50 stars encircles the central design, and the legends United States of America and half-dollar appear around the outer border. The 1974 D half-dollar is notable for its large mintage. Hundreds of millions were struck, because during the mid-1970s the U.S. Mint still produced half-dollars for general circulation, even though Americans were increasingly uninterested in using them in daily transactions. Most ended up stored in banks, casinos, and armored carrier inventories rather than passing frequently through the public's hands. As a result, circulated examples are extremely common, while high-grade uncirculated pieces, MS 65 and above are moderately scarcer due to the Denver Mint's sometimes inconsistent striking quality in the early 1970s, which can result in softer hair detail on Kennedy's portrait or less sharply defined feathers on the eagle. Collectors evaluating a 1974 D half-dollar typically examine the sharpness of the hair above Kennedy's ear, the clarity of the lettering in "In God We Trust," and the eagle's wing feathers and shield lines to determine strike strength and potential grading tier. The most famous aspect of the 1974 half-dollar series is the existence of the 1974 D-double die obverse (DDO) variety, where doubling is visible most clearly on the letters of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." While the variety is not extremely common, it is highly sought after by collectors, and authenticated examples in high grade can command significant premiums. Aside from the DDO, typical 1974 D half-dollars do not contain major recognized varieties, though minor die cracks, die chips, and examples of machine doubling are not unusual for this era and may appeal to error enthusiasts. In terms of value, the majority of circulated 1974 DIVs trade for face value because they contain no silver and exist in enormous quantities. Even uncirculated pieces are usually affordable, though superb gem examples can be worth considerably more due to the difficulty of finding coins free from bag marks and with strong luster. Historically, the 1974 D half-dollar illustrates the ongoing decline of the denomination's everyday utility. Although still produced in huge numbers, the coin was gradually becoming a collector and bank storage item rather than an object of daily use, overshadowed by smaller denominations, the rising use of electronic payments, and declining public interest in large circulating coins. Nevertheless, the coin remains popular among Kennedy series collectors because of its classic design, its place in the evolution of U.S. minting practices, and the enduring national symbolism captured in the inscriptions "Liberty," "Indiana God We Trust," "E Pluribus Unum," and the powerful presidential eagle on the reverse. Many beginning collectors start their Kennedy half-dollar sets with coins like the 1974 D because they are inexpensive yet historically rich, visually impressive with their large 30.6mm diameter, and easy to find in mint-state condition through old rolls, bags, or inherited collections, making the 1974 D an enduring and accessible piece of American numismatic history. Next top. The 1977 D Kennedy half-dollar is a circulating commemorative coin issued by the United States Mint at the Denver Mint, represented by the D mint mark, and it remains an interesting piece of modern American numismatics due to its connection to mid-20th century history, its composition, and its role in the changing usage of half-dollars in daily commerce. Although many people refer to it as uncirculated, or, as sometimes misspelled, untilled, the official term is uncirculated or mint state, describing a coin that left the mint without entering commercial circulation and therefore retains its original luster, strike, and detail. The Kennedy half-dollar series began in 1964 as a rapid and emotional national response to President John F. Kennedy's assassination in November 1963. Congress approved the design in record time, replacing the Franklin half-dollar. By 1977, the half-dollar was still produced for general circulation, but usage in everyday transactions had already declined, as Americans increasingly preferred quarters and paper bills. The 1977 D half-dollar is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, a copper-nickel-clad composition introduced in 1971 after the silver versions ended in 1970. It weighs 11.34 grams, has a diameter of 30.61 millimeters, and features the reeded edge characteristic of many U.S. coins. The obverse front was designed by Gilroy Roberts and displays the left-facing bust of President Kennedy, with Liberty arching around the upper rim and "In God We Trust" in two parts, "In God" to the left of the neck truncation and "We Trust" to the right, reflecting the national motto, which had appeared on U.S. coinage since the Civil War and became officially mandated on all coins in 1955. The date 1977 appears below the portrait, and to its right lies the small D mint mark for Denver. The reverse back, designed by Frank Gasparo, showcases the heraldic presidential seal, a detailed American eagle with arrows in one talon, symbolizing readiness to defend, and an olive branch in the other, symbolizing peace, encircled by 50 stars, with the motto E pluribus unum, out of many one, positioned on a banner above the eagle's head. This motto describes the unification of the original colonies into one nation. Around the outer rim appear the legends United States of America and half dollar. In terms of minting, the Denver Mint produced 31,449,106 half dollars in 1977, a relatively large mintage, which is why most circulated examples are common and hold mostly face value. However, collectors evaluate the coin based on condition, strike quality, luster, and the presence of any errors or die varieties. An uncirculated, mint state, 1977, D half dollar can range from MS 60, showing minor contact marks, to MS 67 or higher, sharp strike, full luster, and minimal imperfections, although ultra-high grades are scarce due to the typical production quality of 1970s clad coinage. Well-preserved examples with bright luster, strong details in Kennedy's hair, and clear definition in the eagle's feathers command higher collector interest. Rare die varieties, such as unusual doubling, DDO or DDR, die breaks, or misstrikes may add value. While the coin contains no silver, it remains historically significant because it belongs to the era when the Kennedy half dollar still appeared regularly in U.S. commerce before fading into limited use in the 1980s and beyond. The combination of patriotic mottos, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and E pluribus unum, reflects the U.S. Mint's tradition of embedding national identity, unity, and faith in its circulating coinage. For collectors today, the 1977 D. Kennedy half dollar represents not only a piece of monetary history, but also a symbol of the nation's memory of President Kennedy and the broader cultural and economic transitions of late 20th century America. And when found in truly uncirculated condition with strong eye appeal, it offers a satisfying example of the enduring design and craftsmanship of modern U.S. coinage. Next top. The 1978 United States Kennedy half dollar is a copper-nickel-clad coin representing a continuing chapter in the history of American circulating coinage and the nation's remembrance of President John F. Kennedy, whose assassination in 1963 prompted Congress and the U.S. Mint to create a half dollar bearing his likeness only months later in 1964. By 1978, the design was well established yet remained deeply symbolic in American culture, even as the half dollar's role in everyday transactions steadily declined. The 1978 issue was minted at both Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D, though it remained part of general circulation like all half dollars struck after the silver content ended in 1971. The coin's obverse front, designed by Gilroy Roberts, features a portrait of President Kennedy facing left, modeled after a medallic design created shortly before his death. This portrait became an enduring national tribute, intended to embody Kennedy's vigor and forward-looking spirit. Around the top rim appears the large, bold word Liberty, a long-standing American coinage inscription invoking both national ideals and historical continuity from earlier U.S. denominations. Beneath Kennedy's chin appears the national motto In God We Trust, split into two parts across the lower field. In God on the left and We Trust on the right, positioned just above the date 1978, which anchors the design while illustrating the coin's placement within the late 1970s era of U.S. monetary history. This motto, which first appeared on coins during the Civil War and was made mandatory on all U.S. currency in 1955, reflects a national expression of faith and cultural identity preserved through generations of American numismatic tradition. The reverse back, designed by Frank Asparo, presents the heraldic presidential seal, composed of a stylized American eagle with its wings spread wide, clutching an olive branch in its right talon to symbolize peace and arrows in its left talon to symbolize readiness and national defense. Above the eagle's head flows a banner holding the Latin motto E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, an emblematic statement of the unity of the original colonies and the broader American ideal of forging one nation from diverse origins. Encircling the eagle are 50 stars, representing the states of the Union, forming a dense halo of symbolism that strengthens the patriotic identity of the piece. Around the rim, the inscriptions United States of America and $50 denote issuing authority and denomination. In physical terms, the 1978 Kennedy $50 is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving it a silvery appearance despite containing no silver. The switch to copper-nickel clad composition in 1971 marked a shift away from precious metal coinage as silver prices rose. The coin weighs 11.34 grams, measures 30.61 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge typical of higher denomination U.S. coins, originally intended to prevent shaving or clipping of precious metal but preserved as a traditional feature even after silver was removed. The 1978 issue came at a time of economic change in the United States. Rising inflation and shifting public habits meant $50 were less frequently encountered in circulation, though the mint continued producing them for vending systems, banks, and collectors. While the series had transitioned fully into modern clad coinage by this year, certain design nuances, such as variations in strike sharpness or minor die weaknesses, remained common topics among collectors examining the portrait's hair details or the eagle's feather lines for grading purposes. The Philadelphia Mint struck millions of 1978 $50 without a mint mark, while the Denver Mint produced large quantities marked with D, making both issues generally common today. For collectors, the value of a 1978 Kennedy $50 depends mainly on condition, with circulated pieces retaining mostly face value yet uncirculated examples, especially those retaining original luster, minimal contact marks, and crisp design details, earning interest among enthusiasts of modern U.S. coinage. Although the 1978 coin carries no silver bullion worth and is not rare in mintage, it remains significant as part of the evolving story of American currency and the enduring tribute to President Kennedy, whose image continues to appear on the $50 6 decades after his death. The mottos Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and E Pluribus Unum collectively represent deeply rooted American value.